Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and homemaker. Come along with me as I share my love for simple living, growing in my allotment garden, diving into what it means to be an urban homesteader and embracing life as a mother and homemaker. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I am so excited for today's episode. I have my friend Hayley from An Enchanted Childhood come to talk to me all about slowing down, simple living, and just all that good stuff, where it started for her and where she is now, and lots of helpful tips and recommendations and things like that. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, Hayley, and welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. Thank you for joining me. So before we get into today's episode, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us who you are, what you do, all of that stuff.
I am Hayley. I live in North Yorkshire, in the Yorkshire Dales, very remotely. I am a homemaker, home educator, home lover, and I've recently started to look at sharing content around living spiritually and how you can, as a family, find magical ways of bringing rhythm into your home and using the seasons and the wheel of the year to honour slow and simple living. So that's quite a new direction for me, which I'm excited to get started in. But yeah, my main role is a home educator and a homemaker and a home lover, really. And I'm very passionate about living slowly and sustainably and being very child-led and family-focused.
Excellent. So today we're going to discuss how you switch from living a sort of very mainstream life to completely flipping it on its head and having a completely different way of living. So for you, when did things start to shift?
To quickly, a little bit of background, we were living in the Yorkshire Dales and we had to move back to a house that we had on the market because it wouldn't sell. And I remember going back to that house and being really excited because we had lots of shops on our doorstep. There were soft plays that my eldest could go to. I'd just had a newborn baby and I was able to get out and go to lots of baby groups and things like that. And bearing in mind, I never really felt like I fit in any of those groups. I never felt like I fit in most of my life, to be honest. But yeah, but I did feel like, oh yeah, this is great. We're going from living in the Yorkshire Dales, we're going to somewhere that's busy and there's lots of things going on all the time, and there's lots for the kids to do. You know, I could go to sit in a coffee shop or get a takeaway whenever I wanted. And at that time, I felt like that was a really good thing. And then I had my newborn baby and we went into lockdown and COVID hit, and everything that I kind of felt quite excited about having around me disappeared. I couldn't go shopping. I couldn't go to any baby groups. I couldn't meet any friends. My family lived hours away down south, so I didn't have anyone I could see, and I became very lonely and isolated. And I think I'd always had a lot of my friends on Instagram anyway. From the moment I was pregnant with my first, I kind of made quite a few connections with people, and I spoke to people online, and got a lot of inspiration from people I followed. But I think that was the time that things really started to shift. I'd I'd had previous birth trauma, so I'd worked through that, and breastfeeding trauma, which I know we've spoken about before, and we're going to go into more details on another time. But there was a lot of other stuff that that kind of hadn't really taken me down a different path yet at that point, but it had opened my eyes to a little bit. So we were trying to live very sustainably. I'd started cloth nappying. I'd started trying to reduce chemicals in our home. I'd kind of gone a lot greener. That's probably the better way. I've gone a bit more eco and a bit more greener. I still saw busy as a badge of honour. So I remember my youngest being a newborn and me getting up one day and having to go to a swimming lesson and then go to the preschool to a pottery party and then go on to another thing that I'd had booked. And then that afternoon we met friends for a meal and then we got home that night. I think we'd done about 5 different things in one day and we were exhausted and stressed and rushed. And but that's what every weekend was like. It was just normal that we spent every weekend being busy and filling our time with all these things that you can possibly do. And I think when we went into lockdown and we had to stay at home, I really connected and found a purpose that I think I'd always been looking for.
Yeah.
And I realised that I was enough for my family. Time together was one of the most important things that we had ever had. Getting out and having those walks each day, just locally in nature, was really fulfilling. We had so much fun, like just making meals together and laying the table and putting a nice candle on it and creating a feast. Like one day we were meant to have gone on holiday, so I said, instead of going on holiday, let's make a continental breakfast and we lay out all our meats and our cheeses and we baked bread and there's just such beauty in us creating this feast and sitting down and spending kind of the day doing it, that it actually filled our cup so much and it was so enjoyable just from having a meal together as a family. And I realized that there was so much to be had from just being at home. You know, my daughter had been in preschool up until that point, and I realized that I could be that kind of Pinterest mum and set up a lot of games and activities. And obviously the weather was really lovely and we were out in the garden quite a lot, and I was drawing letters on the fence and she was having to use a water gun to squirt them off when she recognized her letter. And I kind of felt like, I'm loving this life is fantastic. And my husband was working, he was a key worker and had to still go off and work during lockdown, and so I was on my own with this newborn baby and this 3-year-old, but I was happier than ever.
Yeah.
Honestly, I know lockdown was hard in so many ways, but all of a sudden I thought, these things are making me really happy doing these things together. And I don't want to go back to how it used to be. I don't want to be busy.
Yeah. And you know what? I think a lot of people viewed lockdown the same, because I know, like, the first lockdown was, on the one hand, it was, stressful, not knowing what was existing outside of your four walls, but inside our four walls, exactly the same as you. Like, it just like brought everything like just to within your home. And so my husband, he wasn't a key worker, but he continued to work all the way through COVID, and but from home. COVID brought him home. He, about a week before lockdown, he was like, right, I really don't know sort of what we're looking at here, so I'm just gonna go and work from home. And then, if he worked in like a shared office space at the time, and the other guy he worked with, also went home, and they've never been back. They gave up the office space and now they just permanently work from home. So it brought him home. In those very early days, it was sort of quite flexible, and yeah, I just loved being home. So I had just my daughter at the time, and she'd just turned 1, and yeah, the same as you. Like, we spent, obviously the weather was beautiful. I always, like, this time of year, I always think, like, do you remember lockdown when the weather was so good and now it's just not?
What's happened?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when we couldn't go anywhere, the weather was beautiful. But yeah, we used to, like, we have a field opposite our house. We used to go over there, like, when my husband had finished work, and we would just go and have fun, miles away from anybody else. And the world was just quiet. It was just really
Yeah.
quiet. Like, we live like quite close to an airport. There was hardly any planes, couldn't hear
Yeah.
any traffic. Was nothing, and it just like brought us home. And I think a lot of people realized that actually this is like the break that we have needed. If you push aside everything else that was going on, I think it showed a lot of people that actually this way of life is really quite nice. And then
Yeah.
I remember, like, you would like hear in the news like getting back to normal or getting back to like normal life, and I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to
I
go back.
didn't want that. I As soon as things opened back up, I just said to my husband, I can't live here anymore. Like, with the moving into that back into that house was meant to be a very temporary situation, and I just said, I can't, I can't live here anymore. It's not right. I need to get back to the Dales. When things started opening up a little bit and we were able to go over to the Dales and see family, and walk 2 meters apart and stay in your separate bubbles. And I remember my daughter, just my youngest, just starting to sit up and being on the grass, and it was her grandma's birthday, and she was sat there, and she toppled over, and she couldn't come and pick her up, and because she thought she had to stay away, and it was like, it was just ridiculous. Let's not even go into the whole debacle. But at the same time, we'd come for like a visit, and I'd be like, I don't want to go home again, I want to stay in the Dales. And it got to the August, and I was like, I need to be back, right now. And we did. We just, we came back, and we had our sort of heart set on it, and luckily, the house, we put the house back on the market, and it sold relatively quickly. But it was a bit scary because we didn't want to be in that same situation again. But at the same time, we just knew something had to change, and we didn't want to go back to that badge of busy.
Yeah,
That we didn't want to go back to, like, I now don't really go anywhere on the weekends. Weekends are our sort of quiet family time at home. Occasionally, we might go to a local house or garden or somewhere that's a little bit quieter, but you wouldn't see me now like at a soft play on a weekend, or at a theme park or anything like that. I just, that's when we sort of save my husband's holidays, and we'll do things sort of a bit quieter,
yeah,
because it's the noise and the busyness and the rushing about just don't suit us anymore. And it's the slower and the quieter the better, really. But I did have to also go through a lot of changes in myself, so I've had to do a lot of work, um, internally, to also get to the lifestyle that I want now. There's been a lot of education, and probably quite a lot of release as well, of realizing that not needing to live like we used to. Like, I sort of, I've hit on about the birth trauma with my eldest. I've had to sort of do a lot of work on anxiety and on low self-esteem and depression, and work through those to really get to a place now where I'm starting to feel like I'm starting to get my stuff together. I don't feel like I'll ever be truly healed. um, but I feel like I'm living a life that aligns with the purpose that I was put here for.
yeah,
And that's really starting to settle into, I can walk out of my house now. I did it last night. I took the dog for a walk, and as I was walking along by the river, I thought, wow, this is lovely, isn't it? Like, I am so lucky. And sometimes you get to that point where you don't want to say how happy you feel or how good things are, because you think it might make someone else feel bad about themselves, which is a bit sad, really, that you can't really share that I'm doing these things that make me feel happy because I don't want someone else to feel bad about themselves. But it's taken a lot of work to get to feeling that things are going well, because I'm listening to those nudges and those instincts that are telling me that this is aligning with the true me. And it's listening to those subtle shifts and hints and things that go on to think, yeah, this is what I want to do, this feels right. And it's listening to that gut feeling of, yeah, this is right for us, we're doing the right thing now. And sometimes I will go into those old patterns of going somewhere or doing something just because someone else has shared it, and it's that comparison thing, or someone else has done something and I do it and I think, oh no, that didn't sit right, that doesn't feel right for me. And it's listening to the gut and the intuition that we have of how to live a life that is true to you.
Yeah, and I think like sort of living sort of a more mainstream life that, a lot of us did, certainly pre-COVID, is like so ingrained that
Yeah,
actually doing something different has to sometimes, or at least at the beginning, has to be like a really conscious choice to do every single day. And like living sort of more mainstream is something that we could very easily like slip into.
yeah,
And sometimes, yeah, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, if we're the same as you said, like things on the weekend, like places on the weekend, it's like, no. And I think as home educators as well, like we're very much used to things not being so busy. So like when it's the school holidays or weekends, it's like, oh, like where's the nice quiet week? Like I always ask a couple of my friends, I'm like, when are the school holidays so I can avoid
I
them?
can stay at home.
And it's
Exactly.
funny, we just recently went to like one of our home ed groups, and it just like Easter holidays had just finished, and it was like the first day that school children would have been back in the classroom. And we were like at this home ed group, and that all the home ed groups, like all the home ed kids, they were like wild, like they'd just been let out after 2 weeks where they probably were sort of like living a bit more of a quiet life.
Yeah, no, I completely see that. We did the same, actually. We went to a home educators day on the Monday, and it was like, it was funny because it was a specially organised home educators day. You kind of knew that all the kids there were home ed kids, and it was like home ed in the wild. Do you know what I mean? Like it was so lovely that we were walking around it's Beamish open air museum, so it was like back in time, and there's Victorian shops and things like that. The kids just absolutely loved it. And but all the kids there, you kind of like, every family that walked past you had a smile, and knowing that, like, yeah, you get this. Like the kids kind of were exploring and adventure, and it had a really nice feel. But you could just see that there was that kind of sense of freedom about the kids, just kind of all being the same, if that makes sense. That
Yeah.
they were like able to that was like their first trip after Easter, and I could just sense that, like, yeah, everyone was kind of happy to be out, but happy for it not to be busy.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, I've got friends, and my kids have got friends who, are at school, or their children are at school, and it's just like, yeah, it's just we have to do some things in the holidays, but I try and keep it to sort of a minimum, and it's always like it always just feels a lot. I no way of explaining it other than I feel like my shoulders just get extra tense.
Yeah,
I'm
there's a weight, heaviness, but like, oh, you're kind of like, if you book a National Trust Easter egg hunt or something like that, it's so busy. And but I think every well I used to do everything that I thought I should do because of what everybody else was doing. So it got to the point of Valentine's Day, I would be buying new outfits and new hair bows and new cutlery and new heart-shaped crumpets to put on the table, and everything was within a theme of commercialism to keep up, because that's what you did. Children need come, you've got to buy the clothes from the shops. And it was, everything is something to be spending money on or keeping up with. So you've got to, it's like, it's not Halloween now unless you've been pumpkin picking,
Yes.
or it's not the summer holidays unless you go strawberry. And don't get me wrong, I do those things, I love doing them with my family, but we are still like, when did this happen that like every event and every occasion is activity or a planned out? And I'm all about family rhythms and routines, and finding beauty the in like every day and in the seasons, and but I now don't go to the pumpkin patch down the road that has the fun fair and has all the activities on. We find a local farm who sells pumpkins, and you go and pick a pumpkin and they weigh it, and we go home and we decorate it at home and we make it a thing. So I'm just trying not to keep up with the noise of the excess of everything. So like when it comes to Christmas, we've made that mistake many times where you have to do the Polar Express trip, and you have to do the breakfast with Santa, and you have to do the Christmas tree, and it just becomes so much that you think, I can't do it all, and I don't like to do it all. So we found, like last year, we had like a little Christmas party at home and watched Polar Express in our pajamas, and that was lovely.
Yeah.
And it didn't cost anything, and we didn't have to go anywhere too busy, and the kids still talk about it now, like that our party in our pajamas and things like that. You know, big firework displays that you have to pay a fortune to get into and get all the stuff. Like, my kids are just as happy with sparklers in the garden.
Yeah.
Like, it's not another thing that's just come to me, going off on a bit of a tangent, is before was the hauls of, like, I've gone to B&M and I filled my trolley with 17 different flavors of Zaflora and scented candles. And I don't buy any of that stuff now anyway, but that's a different subject. But I'd walk through into B&M and I would fill my trolley with all the stuff, and I'd be like, I only came in for 2 things and look at my big full trolley. Like, that just doesn't happen anymore, because I don't buy any cleaning products from B&M, and I don't really buy processed food. So yeah, don't get me wrong, I do go to B&M for certain things, like, but we get our stationery from there for the kids, because we like to get them, like, change their pens and their pencils and things like that. Like, we'll do things, but at the same time, not everything turns into like all the excess. So for me, I don't think twice now about, I've got all these leftover bits of lemon, I'll stick them in a jar with some white vinegar and make my own spray. But then I still will go and buy my own. I still will go and buy washing detergent or dishwasher tablets, because I'm not trying to make my life really hard, but at the same time, I don't have to keep up with excess everything. And that is a massive change for me from being in that mainstream, like, I must go and buy all this stuff. Don't need to anymore. I don't have to do all the stuff or buy all the stuff. Stuff does not make me happy.
Yes. I'm the same. I used to be, I used to love shopping and buying stuff, and like a B&M or Home Bargains trip. And
Yeah.
now, I mean, last time I went to B&M, I bought fruit trees for the allotment. But yeah, I mean, it's not, you can see, like, walking through the aisles. So we had a new B&M open near us, and it's huge. And I saw from somebody online, like, B&M are doing like bare root fruit trees, and I'm like, okay, I'm going. And but it's very easy, like, walking around, I was like, oh, do I need this, or oh, do I need that? And it's like, no, I don't need it.
No,
And I ended up walking out with 5 fruit trees, and I was as happy as anything. And yeah, it's just very easy. I don't like hauls, and like, I sometimes will come across, like, sometimes, like, cleaning accounts on Instagram, and I'm like,
yeah.
all the chemicals, all the
Oh,
chemicals.
yeah. I followed them,
Yeah,
and I followed their tips, and I did things that actually I learned were dangerous,
yeah,
like spraying chemicals onto my bedding or onto my sofa, or mixing bicarb with Zaflora, and science experiment, man.
Yeah.
Like, but I saw it on Instagram, so it must be good. And I did. It. I, where are we now? So my youngest is now three and a quarter. It's been 3 years since that start of COVID of, oh, I'm going to be a little bit eco and start wearing cloth nappies and think about buying more eco-friendly cleaning products, to now really going, can I make that cheaper, or can I make that like with less toxins and things? But then also having to recognize, like, but do I have the energy for that? Do I have
Yeah.
do I have it in me to take that responsibility on? Because you can't do it all. And I think that's the other thing, especially when you go down the route of low tox living and a more of a holistic lifestyle, you start thinking that I've got to do it all to be doing it right, and you
Yes.
don't. Making one change, like for instance, like using cloth nappies, I would still then use a disposable nappy occasionally when we went out, or sometimes even at night time, especially once my daughter started not wearing nappies in the daytime and she was just wearing nighttime nappies. I couldn't go to the point of like just using that one nappy to wash once a week, because I wouldn't have enough of a cycle to then put on to wash my nappies. So then I just moved without beating myself up that I wasn't doing it perfectly, because you don't have to.
Yes.
And that's the, I feel like sometimes in this weird life we go 10 steps forward and we're like, oh my God, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to be fantastic. Look at me. And then you kind of go, hold on, stop it, go back a little bit, because you've gone too far and you're going to burn out. And
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely. Like I make my own cleaning sprays. I have made like my own like hand soap, like pump soap, and like washing up liquid. Only because like the difference between like a washing up liquid and like hand soap was like the difference of one ingredient. So I was like, while I'm making one, I might as well make both.
it's easier.
And got caught in the consumerism trap of, I'll buy these really pretty bottles like pump soap. They're gorgeous, I love them in
Amber,
the kitchen,
yeah.
but I got caught up in that, like, yeah, sure, I'll spend 20 quid on two like glass bottles that one says hands and one says dishes. Of course, it's beautiful, but I mean, I don't regret it, but it was that, like, I could have put it in anything for it to
Yeah,
have worked. But I don't make my own like laundry powder. I don't do that.
no.
I buy that. I buy pods for my dishwasher. Like, I
Yeah,
have looked into making my own stuff for my dishwasher, and I'm honestly just scared that I'm going to mess it up. And
I think it's that, I think to me as well, it's, I think it looks a bit of a, it looks a bit of a, oh, you've got to get a scoop and you've got to put it in. And for me at the moment, grabbing a tablet and sticking it in, I mean, come on, we're using dishwashers, really we should be doing it all by hand. So
yeah,
like,
yeah, and
no,
it's
what, like, let's not think about the electricity there, but it's just got to make your life easier. At the same time, we are,
it has to work. And like you
yeah.
said, you don't have to be perfect. Like I was reading something yesterday about breastfeeding, and it was like the amount of energy like a mother uses for breastfeeding just for 6 months is like the apparently like the equivalent to using a tumble dryer for 1 year. And it's like, I've nearly hit 2 years of breastfeeding. Like I can use my tumble dryer for 4 years for free.
I'm at over 3 years now, so I've got 6 years because he doesn't like me using it.
Yeah, it's just like you've just got to do what works for you. Like we live in a flat, and through the winter, like it's really difficult to dry our clothes. I mean, for everybody in the UK, right? In the winter, it's
Yeah,
really difficult to dry your clothes, and it's sometimes, yeah, sometimes I use the tumble dryer. I mean, like we always have this joke in our house. It's like when you buy something, it's like, is it able to be tumble dried? And I'm always like, look, if it's not, then it doesn't deserve to live in our house, right?
exactly.
It's going in, and if it shrinks, then it wasn't meant to be. But
Yeah,
yeah, we just, we do use our tumble dryer. I do use dishwasher pods. It's just, yeah, just finding things that like work.
I think I got to the point of, like I've explained, I had postnatal anxiety and depression with my eldest. So you have to give yourself the grace to not think about being so perfect, because otherwise it's all you think about. So last year I got to the point where, especially when I went down a bit of the rabbit hole with living holistically and nutrition and where I buy my clothes from, all these things, you can just take it so far that the stress and the worry about doing it all so perfectly is worse for you than what it would be like not doing that, if that makes sense. So for me, like, I buy most of our clothes secondhand now. Number one, financially, it's more viable for us. We are a single income family, and I know we're very passionate about that. Takes sacrifice. So yeah, we can't have expensive holidays every year, and we can't buy all our clothes new. But my kids get really excited about going to the charity shop now and what toys and what things we're going to get. We went this week, and my eldest got a brand new O'Neill surf suit for like going to the beach for £3, and it was like, she's got a suit for the summer, and she was over the moon, and I was over the moon that I've got that. Like, but it brings us joy actually going and buying secondhand, and we know it's better for the planet. But and I said to myself last year, I was like, I am not going to buy myself any clothes unless they're ethical and organic and made from the wool of baby sheep that have been treated perfectly. And I don't do that, mate. I can't. Number one, I can't afford that. Especially with my eldest, how she is, she's a tree climber. Like, she goes through a knee of a pair of leggings at least once a week, probably. Like, I can't buy her £60 Angora wool leggings because they're good for the environment and they're beautiful for her skin, because I can't afford to do that. So I go to H&M, and
yeah.
and I just have to think about, like, what I can afford and what serves my brain and my mind and doesn't stress me out too much as well. So yeah, I go to Primark and get my vest tops, and
Yeah.
but I don't. I try to avoid now going and overspending and spending £300 on unnecessary stuff that I don't need. I don't, get me wrong, sometimes I get a bit excited. I'm like, oh, look at all these lovely things, but I really try to question myself. Like, my worst shop actually is TK Maxx. Like, I go to TK Maxx and I'm like, oh, look at all these lovely things that I don't need, and it's really going, do I need that? Do I love that? What's that going to do? And trying to, like, sometimes I'll pick up loads of things that I like and then, like, sit at the end, what do I really need and what do I really love, and try and bring that stuff home rather than just getting that carried away and that dopamine of, like, yes, spend. It makes you feel good, and then you get home and go, oh, why did I do that? It's trying to do what you can afford, but also what makes you feel good.
I'm the same as you. A lot of the children's clothes are secondhand. We're very lucky. Like, two of my friends, I'm in like a long line of like children, and my two are at the end. So we
Oh,
get
I
a lot of
love
stuff that comes down. And yeah, so my garage is like full of those like plastic boxes, and like every now and again, like, my friend gives me like bin bags, like maybe like 5 or 6 bin bags full of stuff, and then I sort it out into age order, and it's fantastic because then I just go down there, pull it out, and it's it although it's secondhand, a lot of kids don't really always go through a lot. I know as they get older, less stuff can sort of be
Yeah.
passed on. My youngest, I just got loads of stuff out for him, and I was finding like all these cute like little jumpers that she'd passed on to me, and I'm like, oh, and it's like brand new. It's I fill in the gaps of things. Like, so in the last box there was like not enough vests for him. I went out and bought him some vests, and I got him some vests from Asda because I've always liked Asda vests. And yeah, same, I can't afford home education. It's a sacrifice. Being home with them is a sacrifice. And same as you, we're a one income family, and I can't go and buy all organic everything. But
I think it's the same with even like homeschooling or home education, as we call it in the UK. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you'll see an idea on someone's story and you think, oh my God, I want to do that. Like, in my head, I would have my kids having this perfect Waldorf, Charlotte Mason, rhythm in the morning where we have this perfect day and we sit around and it goes, and it doesn't happen. But it's a finding the joy. So my daughter's got certain workbooks that she loves, so I can't say, well, can I say I'm an unschooler if she's doing a workbook? Yes, I can, because I'm absolutely like following my child's lead, doing what brings her joy, and the stuff that, if anything stresses her out or she doesn't like doing it, we don't do it, because this is how I want to have an enchanted childhood. As I want, what I'm trying to get across to people is there's ways of making your life joyful and magical and beautiful in such simple little ways, that as long as it makes you happy, that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be on brand to be holistic, or be on brand to be unschooly, or be on brand to be whatever. Like it's just got to feel good.
Yes, and you can take like elements of things. You don't have to do it all. So you can like take elements of things and be like, oh, actually that works for me, but actually that doesn't. So
Yeah,
what works, because that's going to be what brings you the most joy out of all of it.
yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, there's some other areas that you've embraced in like your slow living journey as well, such as living with the lunar cycle. So how has
Mm-hmm.
following the moon and its energy sort of really worked for you?
Well, so with the lunar cycles, I found, I when I was going on my spiritual journey and I was doing a lot of inner work, I found that meditation and journaling really helped me. But I really struggled to keep up with daily practice. And I felt like with a lot of things that I do, I wasn't doing it perfectly, and I've missed a meditation tonight. So when I started looking at the lunar cycles, I realized that by bringing in moon magic, or by bringing in the moon, I could, on the full moon, release anything that wasn't working for me. I could journal it, I could write it out, I could work with it, and I could get rid of anything that wasn't serving me, or figure out what I needed to change. And then on the new moon, I could think, what do I want to bring in? What do I want to do? What do I want to make part of my life? What is working well? And I found that every 2 weeks I could let go and bring in, and let go and bring in. And it was a really good way of me starting to, like, each moon has got different things that work with it depending what astrological sign it's in. And there are so many books and people out there sharing it. Kirsty Gallagher's one of my favorite. Like, she's absolutely amazing, and she shares a lot of brilliant information about each moon and what they mean. And then it gives you kind of tips and a focus on, like, this moon is working with um, energy of where your relationships at, or where your career's at, or what's working in these areas. And then you could be like, oh well, this feels really good, this doesn't feel good. So then I kind of take myself now and say to my husband, right, it's a new moon tonight, I'm having a night in my bedroom on my own, with my journal, with my diary, and I can sit and focus on myself and what's working. And it's brought so much to my life, it really has. And I don't have that pressure of daily, like, oh, I've got to meditate, because I just now do it on the full moon and on the new moon, and it brings a lot of peace to me. But it also works really well with my energy of what is serving me and what isn't. And it's a way of constantly checking in with myself about what's working, without any pressure to feel like I've got to have got to do it every day, because I haven't got time to do that. But every 2 weeks is perfect. And some moons I feel like, oh, I'm not really feeling this one. And other times I feel a massive shift in energy and feel like there's a lot of stuff to work through.
Yeah.
But I've started like using oracle cards alongside it, and just bought a pack and sat with it, and I pull cards out whatever I feel drawn to. And then sometimes I can think, oh, that really relates to me right now, and I'll try and look at focusing on that. So I now this year I've just brought in trying to get sunlight on my face every day. And it doesn't matter if it's raining or it's cloudy, it's not about that, but it's every morning I try and get outside for 10 minutes to start my day with that right energy. And that was because of a meditation that I did, that I really felt like I needed to work on my morning rhythm for myself. But that's because I was watching someone on Instagram who's another home educating mum, and she gets up at 5 o'clock every morning to have that time before the kids wake up. And then I was going, oh, I can't do that. I'm exhausted if I got up then, and I'd have to try and fit all these things in. And I realised that's because what works for her doesn't work for me. But just by bringing that thing in where I can get outside, that that came to me, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do it. And it's the difference it's made to my life, and that was because of like really listening to the lunar cycle. But then that ties in with the lunar cycles is that I also work with my menstrual cycle,
Yeah.
which as women, I think for so many years, our periods aren't talked about and they're perceived as dirty or embarrassing. And they are huge. They are absolutely huge. And we could go back to years and years ago when women got together in their red tent and actually honoured their period. But at the same time, periods are such an inconvenience for us now because they get in the way of living in a man's world.
Yes,
And we
absolutely.
cannot keep going on this 9 to 5, busy, 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 constantly throughout the month because our bodies do not work like that. Yes, and okay, if you're on hormonal contraception, it might be different and you might not have it. And then it's quite good to work with the lunar cycle and focus on that if you haven't got a menstrual cycle. But if you've got a menstrual cycle, if you pay that attention, like I remember when I first started learning about it and learning about ovulation is your inner summer and that's your goddess time and it's you're fantastic. Do you know what? I'm a moody mo. I am absolutely awful. I am Mrs. Angry. I am really quick to be rattled when I'm ovulating. And I think was it Thursday this week, I was like really snappy with the kids getting in the car because they forgot their water bottles and their coats and I have to do everything in this house, and I was angry mum getting into the car, and then I was like, oh, I'm ovulating today. And it was just like I knew it because I was moody and I was being angry about them not remembering their water bottles, which normally wouldn't bother me because it's just what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
But and it's honoring that fact that the week before your period, that's your autumn, and that's when you should be getting ready to hibernate and you should be slowing down. And actually, that day of your first bleed, it's okay to go to bed when the kids go to bed and lay in your bed and cozy up with a book and not feel like you have to do that to-do list that's never ending because your body needs rest.
Yeah.
So it's and actually, like for me, I know when I'm coming out of my period because that's when I want to spend more. And I find like, so now I try, and if there's like a big purchase that I want to do, I try and bleed on it. So I'll try and give it a full month. And like, do I really need this? Do I want this next month? Because like throughout my cycle, I'll go through flows, ebbs and flows of like, I really want this, and oh no, I don't want this, and you kind of, and it's recognizing those things. So I know like 3 days before my period, I'm really, really hungry. I eat. I'm not going to starve myself just because my body needs more calories, because it does.
Yeah.
Um,
And how many of
but
us,
just
honestly, how many of us have been like either like before our period's due, been like in like a stew about something, or we're angry about something and we're like, I just feel like this certain way. And then I don't know, you go to the bathroom and you realize, oh, that's
that
why.
makes
That all
yeah,
makes sense now. And it's funny because until when I had my first child, when my cycle came back after having her, I felt like I physically could see my cycle a lot better, like where I was in the month, like different sort of like cervical secretions and things like that. Like, I think it wasn't until I had my first child that I sort of really could see it better myself. I don't know if
yeah,
that I understood it better, or whether after I'd had a baby, my body was like a bit more clearly defined over these things. But I
yeah,
definitely, when it came to then having my son, so bit of backstory, it took me 2.5 years to get pregnant with my daughter. And it took me one try to get pregnant with my son. And so I don't know what the difference was there, but I definitely understood my body a little more, as in I knew when I was ovulating, I knew when the best time to make
yeah,
babies was. And I don't know if that was the sole reason, or whether there was something else going on the first time round. But yeah, it was much easier. And so Yeah, I just understood my body more, and like I haven't actually had a cycle for nearly 2 years. So now I've literally in the last couple of months my cycle has come back after having,
Yeah.
so I
It's
got
a relief, isn't it? Now I quite look forward to it. Like,
yeah.
I find my week before my period a lot harder than I actually do my period now. And that's okay, because it's listening to my body. Because I feel like when I do finally bleed, I'm like, oh, there we go. There you are. Hello, my old friend. You're back again. Just like, but I think with regards to how we live our lives, honoring slow doesn't necessarily mean we're not busy. Slow means that we are living aligned with the energy that we have and the season that we're in, and the where we are in our cycle. So when I'm on my period, I try and keep quiet. I don't keep busy, because we don't I don't want to pack my days full, because I don't have the energy, but I do in my spring. So I like, when I look at booking ahead for the month, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be on my period then. I'm not going to travel for 2 hours in the car to have a day out with the kids. I'll just stay a bit more local. And actually, by honouring the moon and by honouring my menstrual cycle, sometimes I'm busy, sometimes I'm not. And this is when the a lot of people come back will say, well, you're lucky because you're at home, you're homeschooling, so you don't have to do this, and you don't work, so you don't have to do this. But I really believe that anyone can make changes. Just because I am a home educator and I'm at home all the time with my kids, and I can say no to things, like, anybody can say no to things. Maybe you can't say no to work, and you can't say no to commitments that financially provide for your family and things like that. But you don't have to keep going when you don't have to keep going and be so busy, and you don't have to say yes to doing things if you think, oh, actually, no, I'm going to be on my period then. Do you know what? We'll just stay at home that weekend and focus on baking cookies and having a nice walk locally. We don't have to go to Alton Towers for the weekend while I'm on my period. You know, you don't, again, with like living slow, I think the when the privilege thing comes in and people will start saying that, oh yeah, well, you get to make these choices and you get to do that. Like we've said, there's sacrifice that goes into being able to do that, but at the same time, there's, for me, because we honor the seasons, and I really am trying now to work with the wheel of the year. Winter's quiet because
Yeah.
it's meant to be, when we
Yeah.
should be at home. It's when we should be quiet. And summer, like, it makes me laugh, because every year in winter I'm like, I'm going to do 1,000 hours outside this year, and I last about 3 days. But I every summer I know, because of like the life that we lead, that my kids will go out at 9 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes they come home and we go in at 7 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
and they're outside. So I don't need to monitor that my kids getting 1,000 hours outside, because I am living seasonally. So
Yeah.
my kids are outdoors when the weather, well, in all weathers actually, but my kids are outdoors every day. But in the summer they're outdoors for longer, and in the winter we're at home more in front of the fire, and we're eating cozy food, and we're snuggling up and reading books and playing games. And then in the summer we're outside more, splashing in rivers, and we're living the dream, really, because that's what we want to do. And that's by us honoring that lifestyle of what's important to us and what brings us joy. If that doesn't bring you joy, if you don't want your kids to get mucky, then don't let them play in rivers. Like, do you know what I mean? You don't have to do it just because that's what you're told is the right thing to do. You've got to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
And like, you don't have to do it because everyone else is doing it. That's the whole point of living slowly and living simply. It is not about having nothing and doing nothing. I don't lay around all day watching TV and doing nothing by living a slow and simple life. I'm a busy person, but I'm busy doing things that make me happy.
Yeah. And I think there's like this real misconception, isn't there, that like slow living means doing like everything at like snail's pace. And I've
Yeah,
got a really busy week coming up, and it's just fallen that way.
because you're
Um,
seeing me. You're
it's
seeing
absolutely it.
it.
just one of those weeks that's like busy, but it's busy doing things that I know is going to bring us joy. So it's not stressful. I'm not
Yeah,
stressed ahead of it. It's just, I've got like different things on all but one day. And so the one day that I don't have anything planned, I'm just going to have a day at home and just a day to just do nothing. Kids will just play, I'll potter around in the kitchen, and that'll be our day. And so yeah, it's not about doing things like at a snail's pace, but just doing things that like work for you and that serve the way of life you want to live.
yeah. And I think sometimes it's about being able to stop what you're doing and be in the moment. So my daughter comes up to me and I'm in the middle of doing something, and like the other day I was stuffing a chicken. She comes up and she's like, can you make my vest into a crop top for me? And she comes up to me with scissors, and I'm like, not at the moment, but I will do. And as soon as I got that chicken in the oven and washed my hands, I said, come on then, let's stop and do it now. That wasn't in my day's plan to like design her a new piece of clothing. But it was but being able to stop and do something with her, and not always feeling like, well, no, I'm too busy because I'm doing the chicken and then I've got to do the washing and then I've got to do this and then I've got to do that. It's about being able to be in the moment and go, all right then, yeah, let's do that. And
Yeah,
without having to like, that to me is when I go, oh, that's worked really well today, we really enjoyed doing that. Or when my little one goes into the toy box and comes out and brings me something and she's like, can we play this? And I'm like, maybe not right now. Or sometimes I do say, okay, then why not? But it's about being able to be in the moment.
yeah,
And that's, I think, when we rewind back 3 years ago to the start of like my big B&M hauls and my big over processed life and over busy life, and following up, keeping up with everyone. That's the biggest thing I can say that's changed, is being able to be in the moment
yeah,
and being able to just do what feels good to us, and not not worrying that I'm not doing what other people are doing, and that means that I'm missing out on anything of my life. I've got people around me who have got completely different lifestyles to me, who drive really flashy cars, who have really expensive holidays every year, and sometimes I do go, oh, am I missing out? And I don't get to take my kids on holiday here, and I don't get to do this, and I don't get to do this. But then, like I say, I can walk down the river in the evening when my husband's putting the kids to bed, and I'm just walking the dog and go, life is good.
yeah,
And life is good doing nothing sometimes.
yeah. And
And that's when it's good for me. And that's what's most important.
I go down the allotment and, sometimes, like, literally just disconnect, and
Yeah,
it just feels nice. I mean, like, my allotment surrounded by houses on every side. It's not like I'm not super rural or anything while I'm down there, but it's just quiet. There's, maybe you can hear other people doing stuff, but rarely, you're rarely there when there's tons of other people there, except maybe in the summer. And it's just nice. It's just peaceful. Yesterday I popped down there just to like check my seedlings. So much joy from seeing everything growing, and
yeah,
just enjoying myself. And just sometimes I'll go, like, we'll all go. Sometimes, probably more often, I'll go by myself and
yeah,
just have some time where I'm like, check out my rhubarb, and like I'm down there talking to myself all the time. I'm like, right now I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it's just nice. It's just nice to firstly be out in the fresh air, get some vitamin D, and just have a bit of peace and quiet. It's like, I'll take like a herbal tea with me in the flask down there, and just it's just lovely.
I think, just thinking then, like as you were talking, like sometimes like I said, I feel bad. Like sometimes I share what I do online and I think, oh, who cares about this? And I'm just sort of sharing all these things that are kind of like bringing me joy for my day. But like you've said to me in the past, when I've said about, oh, I think I've missed the window with my seedlings, and you're like, well, just buy some plants. Or like by me saying to you, like, I wanted liver in my diet, so I put an ice cube in. I think for me, with using Instagram and social media to express why we love slow living and simple living just by someone giving you a little tip. Like somebody I follow was the one that told Wild Roots Foraging. I love all her foraging videos, and she sort of said about using the stems of the wild garlic, and then I'm like, it's free food. It's, you know, and just by people sharing these little snippets of what brings them joy or things that make them happy or ways that they do things, we can all inspire others and work together to give people other ideas that can bring them happiness as well. So sometimes I think it's not about going, oh, my life's so good and we've got it perfect, because we all know the reality isn't like that. I have, like I say, I have days where I get into the car moaning about the kids forgetting their water bottles, or I have days where I think, oh, I did that wrong and I didn't handle that properly, or oh, I've had days where I've been too busy and I thought I wish I'd not done that, or I've had days where I think, oh, I probably should have done a bit more today, but I don't feel as guilty about that as I used to. But I think it's about sharing what we do, and about these things that make us happy can inspire other people and bring them something else to feel good about, just by sharing a little idea that we don't think might be much could actually change someone else's day.
Yeah.
And how they do things. And I think that's why we've got to keep sharing what we do, because it has benefited our lives so much. Like, I've gone from being the girl who, when my daughter was a year old, had a panic attack before getting on a train because I was so anxious, to being able to listen to my body now and go, this isn't working, I've got to change something, or going, actually, this is really good and it makes me feel really good and I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm going to share about that, because if I can make someone else feel better, then it's worthwhile, and we are changing the world, like little bit by all these little changes that we do.
Yeah. And it also just, it's showing our children like it's okay to live this way, and maybe as they grow they won't get caught up in hustle culture, or
Trap.
yeah.
Trap.
And maybe they will be able to have some sort of better balance in their lives.
Yeah, because we've come from it, I got a mobile phone towards the end of secondary school. Internet didn't come out until I was at university. Well, it was there, but it wasn't as accessed. Facebook came out the year I got with my husband. I feel quite lucky that I didn't live in an age where everything was available to you all the time, and I think sometimes you can drown in that being there all the time, and sometimes it's nice to detox and switch off and slow down and go, we don't need it all. We don't need it all, and it's there, and it is a benefit to us all in some points. And we wouldn't be here talking now unless it was for the noise and the chutter and the clutter and the rubbish that's all around us. But at the same time, you can switch off from it, and it doesn't have to be there all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just always connected now. Like, we have the ability to be, if you have notifications turned on like apps and things on your phone, like people could contact you 24 hours a day. And other than like a few certain people, like family members, we don't need to be connected all the time to everybody.
No.
Largely nothing going on all the time that is any emergency. Like, if I don't respond to an Instagram message immediately, no one is going to die. It's, and so I mean, I have all my notifications except my phone ringing, it's just turned off. And so then I approach it when I have the capacity to approach it. So then be like, okay, I'm going to open my emails and check my emails, or I've got 10 minutes, I think I'm going to scroll on Instagram. And sometimes it can be really difficult, because like I'll open Instagram naturally and I'm like, why am I here? Like,
I know, it's just that button. Yeah.
And so it's just nice to just be able to switch off a little from it all, because it could be really, I mean, I used to like years ago I would have all my notifications on and it would just be pinging all the time, and emails coming through, and now it's just like, I'll get to it when I get to it. Nothing's urgent. There's nothing going on that is urgent, and if it was urgent, then somebody can contact me if they need to. So it just and I think a lot of people do that, do turn their notifications off and just try and
you need to, because you can't be there all the time. You have to be present in the moment with your family and with yourself, otherwise you're just living on a different planet, aren't you, really?
Yeah. So when you look back now at like how far you've come, what stands out to you most on this whole journey of like slowing down? And if you could give any advice to the past you, what would you give?
Such a good question. Oh, I think my spiritual journey has, because I tried to, I kind of like went looking at the lunar cycles and the seasons and foraging, and I felt really drawn to all of that. But then you kind of go and it goes a little bit more witchy, and that just kind of didn't sit as right with me, even though I believe in magic and manifestation and spirituality. I wanted a way of making it more family centered, because that's what I'm about. And I think for a time I tried to fight that and remember the old me, but now I'm in this period of my life where my family is my life now, and that is my purpose, and that's my calling, and that's what I'm working with. And I'm trying to make it so we can honor the seasons and honor everything around us and be true to nature and true to ourselves and go back to the roots of where we came from and bring that into my family. And I think that's about me sort of finding the magic in every day of family focused living. So I think the biggest thing probably is home educating. And I know not everyone can do that and everybody wants to do that, but it has changed my life and I absolutely love it. And I know we're going to do another podcast about that, and everyone will be looking forward to it because it will be amazing. But I just think, home educating is like, it's my life and I'm so passionate about it and I think it's wonderful. And spirituality, of finding a way of me making it work as a family thing. And I think that's lovely that the kids can grow up finding magic in normal everyday things rather than like spells or whatever. It's a way that we can bring rituals and rhythms into just the everyday moments to make it really magical for them.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to chatting about home education in another episode. It's just right at the beginning of like our home education journey in terms of like if you were comparing it to school, but obviously I've known that I'm going to home educate them since they were born, so it's just a gradual process that just keeps on going. And it's just it's a huge focus point in our life as well, and I think it sits very easily side by side with slowing down as well. But that's not to say that you can't slow down and school educate your child.
No, and exactly, you can bring beauty and wonder and magic into every day, no matter how you're living your life. It doesn't have to all be on a certain way of living. It can be brought in for everybody. And I think what I would sort of say to myself is that you don't have to do it all. You don't have to feel that pressure, which I've learned that you've got to be perfect, because nobody is, and everybody is doing the best that they can, and you will have good days and you'll have bad days. But for me, every single night when I go to bed, I write the 3 things that I'm grateful for, and seeing something in every day to be thankful for has really brought a big change, and it's ending the day with such a positivity that I just think that I wouldn't ever give that up now, because there is something in every day, even if it's just a nice meal. Sometimes I'll just be like, dinner was lovely, yum yum yum, and that's like my gratitude for the day, that I did well, I cooked a nice meal, tap on the back for me. But yeah, it's, or a picture that my eldest has drawn that's really pretty, and I'm really grateful for that picture that's gone on my notice board. It doesn't have to be like massive. You can see how you can have gratitude for so many little things, and I think that changes your life when you're just grateful for what you have, and you count your blessings every day. And I hate those like #blessed, but yeah, like why not? Why not be happy? Why not be grateful? Like, what's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with it. I just think people like, they don't want to see people air their dirty laundry, but at the same time, you can't say you're happy. And I think people need to like say more that what makes them happy, and spread that joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been so wonderful to have you and
Yeah, I
and
loved it. I absolutely loved it.
share with us all about the ways you and your family, have a slow and simple lifestyle. So where can everybody connect with you online?
So I'm on Instagram at An Enchanted Childhood, and I am soon going to be releasing an email sign up list where I'm going to start sharing tips for people to bring in each month of what they can do as a family to add a little bit more magic into each day together. So that will be coming soon. I'm looking at releasing that after Beltane, which is on the 1st of May. So I like to try and stick with the turn of each wheel of the year. And I just felt really drawn to bringing something from the 1st of May to inspire other people to find the joy in things they can do with their family.
Excellent. And so I will link everything, like where to find you and all of that, in the notes as well, so people can come and find you. And I'm really excited. I'm going to be your first subscriber.
Oh, thank you. I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's see how it works. I just feel like I need to share, and I feel like I hope that I can bring some happiness to other people. So, and thank you for listening to me and asking all about me. It was really nice to be approached, and I'm glad that we've managed to have a nice chat.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, like I said, thanks for coming on, and we will be back with a home education podcast at some point.
Yay.
Thank
Speak
you.
soon.
Oh my goodness, that was just such a fun podcast. It is always amazing just like having conversations with such incredible people, and I am so excited for Hayley's new venture into her enchanted childhood and her email list and everything that she's going to start sharing. So for all the details and all the links, please check out the notes. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am over there at lifeonplot44, and you can catch up with me on my blog, which is theslowlivingcollective.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will catch you in the next episode.